Hello, Story Seekers. I'm Ben.
I'm Nico, and you're listening to our favourite part of the week.
Stories, discussion, and a high likelihood of gratuitous obscenities, all in the service of a bibliomancer. This is the Tiny Bookcase.
Our regular listeners will know how it works, but for newcomers, Ben and I have both written a story to the same shared prompt.
We're about to share those stories with each other and you for the first time, and then we'll workshop them on mic. The prompt for this episode is The Heart, and you, Nico, are the first one to pump one out.
Oh my. The following excerpts are recovered from the journal of Thomas Elwood. Records indicate he worked under Howard Carter in the early 20th century. No information regarding the year in which the diaries were kept has been recoverable. The pages are near unreadable. A transcript is provided below. June 4th. Diary, I am exhausted. The Frenchman I'm forced to share a cabin with talks incessantly. He doesn't speak a word of English, which gives no aid in the matter of my ceasing his endless yammering. What little French I do possess might draw him across our cramped cabin and into my own bed, should my time in Paris give any accurate indication as to how these phrases work. I have become familiar with all parts of the ship now, should one think to call it that. A boat is what it is, and not a glorious one at that. Still, that Irish ship sits well enough in my memory that I shan't be boarding some massive untested cruise liner any time soon. If one can manage the reek of fish and Frenchman, truly it is not so terrible. And no one would trifle with my belongings. More the mercy. Perhaps it would be better if someone found it and stole it from me. Perhaps then it would be a problem for them. My man. Perhaps all this is a figment of my imagination. Perhaps the years of drink and some rot of the mind brought about by my loose women from every corner of Europa have done for me. But no imagination could kill a man, much less three. I must wait and hope he cannot cross the sea. June 12th. Land. Blessed land, I have been a sea so long, my knees seem to have forgotten how to bounce upon the firmament. But by the grace of God, here we are. I bid Maurice bonne chance. He wishes to work as a vaudeville performer of some kind. I hadn't the heart to tell him his voice was often mistook for one of the screeching gulls that plague every sea voyage. In some small way I shall miss him. Even in a city of this size, I feel terribly alone. There is a library here of renown, and I've taken it upon myself to retrieve a book on so-called curses. I am not mad. If you read this back, Thomas, you are not mad. It is wise to check these things. If God is real and his son Christ, then so too is the devil. This thing that trails me can only be that, devil. I hope even now it stands terrible upon Africa's coast, unable to pass. It can't get me here. It can't. June 15th. I've found. I have read all of the book. I couldn't sleep anyway. I hear it in its damned stone jar, thumping. It has no blood to push, so I cannot think quite must thud so. Thud, thud, thud. I tell it, silence, but the last day or so it will not stop its beating rhythm. But the book says a buried priest may have a curse laid upon him. I do not believe in curses, but I hear the heart beating. Diary, ought I look in the jar? Perhaps my madness has deepened. Loneliness, Thomas, loneliness can make a man mad. Albrecht hung himself, didn't he? After all those weeks alone in the desert. Found an oasis and hung himself from a tree there. Mad. Quite mad. I can hear it now. The heart rate increases by the hour. The book says to steal from the dead is an unforgivable crime, that the dead will reclaim what is rightfully theirs. Nothing belongs to a dead man. Madness, all of it. No soldier ever rose to claim back his boots. Shut up! Shut up! Shut up! June 28th. It is here. Do not ask me how I know. I can feel it. In my bones. Or perhaps the mortal soul that coils around them. I feel its eyes searching for me, like great lantern lights pointed into the darkness of the city. Perhaps it rode all the way here. Perhaps it walked across the ocean's bottom like a crab. Do I leave this jar here? Do I leave it and run? Let the thing find it? Or would it simply seize it up and come for me anyway? How could I know? How could anyone? I prayed last night at the Cathedral of St. John. The father there was kindly, even to an Englishman. He told me to gaze to the heaven for an answer. I found one. There is a fellow named of Knights. The Frenchman Maurice spoke of him. He works in the business of dirigibles. At least that's what the miming seemed to indicate. I wonder if perhaps he's in grease paint now. Maurice, I mean. I hope I have passed no trace of my accursed nature to him. I must fly. It can swim, but it cannot fly. It cannot fly. July 9th. I had thought the ship bad. I must know every seam in this bleak balloon. The man Knight gave me work, so at least I am fed and watered with it. And I have a locker, and it is in there, sometimes still, sometimes beating. I hear it no matter where I am on the Sky Serpent. Rat-ta-tum, and then it stops again. We fly, and every time we land I am afeard again. It is coming for me. I know that it is. My stolen library book begins to split apart from how many times I've read it. The curse means it will trail me until I, too, am dead. I have been stealing sleep where I can. I must only sleep in the air, and drug-induced wakefulness will save me on the ground. But I must be careful. If they discover my habits, oh my curse, they may toss me overboard, to find ground again too soon. Albrecht hung himself. Maurice is a painted French fool, and I am already dead. You are dead, Thomas, dead the moment you took it. Thou shalt not steal. Thou shalt not steal, Thomas. July 17th. It is here. The heart beats a furious marching sound. It calls like a soldier's drum. I can even picture their blue jackets. I see the missionaries on desert sand. They will be there still. Oh, Egypt, I miss her. I miss her stone, her treasures. I see from the window a great black cloud, but it does not move like any wisp of vapor I have ever known. It follows me. I see you, cloud. I see you. It will drag me to the heavens for judgment. Thou shalt not steal. Those words I have carved into myself I must atone, but no confession may be given here. I will die a sinner. July 19th. The cloud is a swarm. It is close now, and I see the glittering wings. Those insects will eat me alive when we land tomorrow. I will be gone, taken to shreds by the things. I will offer it to them. It beats so fast now you could not distinguish the beats. I deafened myself in one ear, with my fountain pens dripping blue nib, to see if it would ease the sound, and it did not. Excuse the blood on the pages, Thomas. The nib was quite filthy. I land soon, and then death. I am sorry, but some must say I hear your name in my dreams. The only time my world is not buried in the beating of your heart. I am sorry. Only these pages and a ragged blanket were recovered from the belongings of Elwood. The blanket is displayed behind what pages could be found. Item 628, 87101. While most scholars believe that the Diary of Elwood points to an untreated case of syphilis and see it as a good example as a cautionary tale regarding health practices in the early 20th century, other scholars disagree. Exhibit 273817, left wall of the next room, shows a documented loss and unexpected recovery of one canoptic jar from the remains of priest Patamose's burial chamber. Thomas Elwood's body has never been recovered. A grave was erected for him in his home county of Shropshire.
What a fascinating story. That was really interesting and really good.
I'm glad. Interesting's a good take.
I think it
Where does
is.
that
I think
come from?
so. I think you mentioned to me that this was the first time that you'd taken this kind of approach before,
Yes,
and
yes. I've not tried that kind of excerpts and but sort of borrowed information is how I would describe it. But
yeah,
yeah, never had a go at it before.
I'd sort of term that potentially to be like a fragmented epistolary, in a way.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, that whole like telling a story through letters, it's a it was a sort of a common trope a long time ago. I think Frankenstein's quite like that in a way. It's like journal excerpts and
yeah.
stuff, isn't it?
And
Um,
I mean, Dracula does. There's a lot of diary stuff in that, isn't there? It's all like,
yes, yeah,
yeah,
it's an interesting. I think letters are very personal, aren't they? And
yes,
I think that that still holds over even into the modern in this sort of like even like postmodern era, whatever the fuck we're in now. Um, it's just all I can tell is it's hell outside whenever I look out the window. So um, the the Frankenstein illusion is actually what brought me sort of like got me into the story, and it very much strongly reminded me of China Miéville's book, the Scar, which
oh wow,
opens with a woman on a boat writing a letter that ultimately she doesn't get a chance to send. And I don't know. There's something really interesting about either journal entries or letters that don't ever actually hit the mark or land with their
yeah,
intended recipient. Um,
yes,
so
yeah, definitely,
so I really enjoy the fact that this is just sort of displayed in like a sort of quasi British museum kind of situation.
yeah.
Having said that, I'm not sure if that framing device works for me.
Okay,
I think that the 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 smash of the end uh, would have been enough. I think I don't know whether it might just be because your actual performance of it was so striking that it was quite jarring to go back to the museum
Yeah, to
narrator
suddenly
voice.
lose all the.
Yeah,
Yeah, I can see that because
but
yeah, it's like a rug pull, but in the wrong direction,
I think so,
like a
and it
roof pull.
also um, tells rather than shows.
Yes.
Just that bit at the end, I think. Um, and it's a complex one though because it's a really because part of the story is this trying to the way that museums try and reframe through a modern lens,
Yeah.
whereas the heart of the story exists in his madness, in his journeys.
Yeah.
Love the character. Really thought he was very good. This sort of hound dog Tomb Raider. Um,
I do. I like the. That kind of voice and that era. You always think of sort of quite stoic men in pith helmets, but there definitely would have been a bit of. Well, we might as well stop in Paris and have a bit of a shag, and I
yeah,
think there's not enough of that in the history books. We've
I
seen
think
the Mummy. Look how handsome they all are.
I think there was some indulgence in the Belle Epoque. I think. Uh, um, yeah, it's great, and it just evoked so many things, like both from like sort of classical literature, like I've already mentioned Frankenstein, but also this idea of you know, retaining a heart in some manner of significance. It reminded
Yeah.
me of through Frankenstein, Mary Shelley, and obviously she kept her husband Percy
Her husband.
by Shelley's heart after he
Yeah, it was
drowned.
calcified, wasn't it?
Yeah, like it didn't burn when they tried to burn his body because it had calcified. Um, or at least that's how the story goes. But obviously he drowned, and this story opens with this guy on a ship with a heart. Like there's really strong links to the Shelley household here.
Yeah. I accidentally wrote a mad homage to the
Yeah,
Sherry legacy.
I think so. But then you've also got Heart in a Jar, which is Jack Sparrow pirates in a
Yes,
way.
and
Um,
there's
yeah,
some accidental Poe as well with the sort of telltale heart stuff, isn't there? The
it's very Poe. It's got a lot of Poe to it, and I really dig that. I think that's gonna be really powerful.
I Yeah,
Yeah,
I think on reflection, I really agree with you. I think I decided that I was going to come at it with this museum framing device, but the middle bit that I've written is actually way better than that
yeah,
device.
100%.
And
Like
I
definitely,
think stripping that out would be a good move, just to go straight in on the diary entries.
that would be my note. I
Yeah,
enjoyed your museum narrator voice, and I enjoyed that positing it as a modern through a modern lens.
yeah,
But maybe assess what's important in that bit at the end, and then just see if you can find a way to weave that in. Because to a certain degree, you've got to trust your readers to, if you want them to make that comparison of
yeah,
contrasting lenses, you got to sort of trust them to do it and give them the tools to do it. I think.
yeah,
Um, but I think it was really compellingly told, exceptionally performed. Um, I loved all of the biblical curse stuff. The bit where he takes his own eardrum with his fountain pen is horrid. That is
yes.
disgusting. I was holding a pen in my hand when you said it, and I dropped my pen in
Oh,
revulsion.
I'm extremely sorry.
Yeah. Um, but it's more that it just evokes that, like it's really really well done. I loved it. Um, I have got a question for you though.
Go on.
Religion. I think the last 10 of your stories have involved religion in some way.
Is it the last 10? Good
It's
lord.
a lot, and I'm just wondering what you're working through. Like, are you consciously doing this, or is this?
I don't think I'm not doing it on purpose.
I
At least
mean, I
I
could be
don't
wrong,
think
but
I am.
it feels like it's becoming like a major part of your creative process is to look at things through religion a bit.
It's possible that it's the so I as you will know, but our listeners might not, I'm getting married fairly soon, very soon. And there's a lot of sort of religious connotations to it. We're having a very not religious at all ceremony, not in a church, no religious wording at all. But maybe there's something in my Catholic schoolboy head that's tugging at the strings because I'm getting married. That's the only thing I think of
I tell you what, this is
for
a hell
it.
of a way to tell me that you're getting married.
Yeah, you're not invited. Sorry,
I'm
mate.
not invited. No, I don't have to give a speech or anything. Uh,
Nope.
yeah, I think that's quite likely. I think it's so connected to religion in a way, not in a way that it necessarily should be anymore, but it's still
Yeah.
there, isn't it? Um, I wouldn't be surprised if that's coming up. Did you go to Catholic school?
I went to a Catholic primary school.
Right. How was
Well, I
so?
couldn't.
What do they do there? Do they? I mean, aside from the obvious jokes, which will probably mean that we have to put a trigger warning on this episode.
I mean, that I was a fat kid. That didn't happen to me. But you just do a lot of singing of hymns in the morning in assembly, and a lot of lessons get sort of filtered back to like everything gets filtered back towards Jesus.
Oh
It's
Christ.
just the way it. But we did. Um, this is actually one of my favourite little memories from being Catholic school. We had not just a nativity, but there at various points of the year, like we had an Easter production where we would do the Easter story,
Hmm.
and I was apparently the first child to ask to be Pontius Pilate.
This does not surprise me, but I think you have told me that before. But even if you hadn't,
Yeah,
that wouldn't surprise me.
it's yeah, it's and like there was a song that we'd always have to sing during that Easter bit, which was just someone had taken an entire passage out of the Bible and set it roughly to music, and it meant that like all of the rhythm was just completely fucked in the whole thing.
Was it like putting combat boots on a horse?
Yeah, it was just really strange. But all these children, there's one line that there was the line of the Bible was he went to seek out the chief priests and Pharisees, and that was one. It goes, he went to seek out the chief priests and Pharisees. Just horrid, just really cramming it in there.
It does sound like it'd be really easy to swap some words out and really fuck with
It,
everybody else's rhythm, even if they're
the
already
chief,
struggling.
the chief priests and Pharisees.
The chief priest phallus, yes.
But I mean, a big part of my love for music came from that. But very specifically, one assembly, I think they kind of run out of new hymns to teach us, and they taught us
It's because it's a
"Bridge Over
dead religion.
Troubled
Wait, no,
Water."
I'm joking. I'm joking.
But yeah, they taught us Simon and Garfunkel's "Bridge Over Troubled Water," and I was like, "Yo, this is so much better than all the other hymns. What
Is
is this?
is this
This is
this is real music?
crazy!" And then was like, "Oh yeah, God, religious. Well, yeah, God." Religious music sucks.
So my dad grew up very connected to the church and quite in a quite religious way, and he was
Yeah,
in the choir and all this kind of thing. And he's a complete atheist now, and he borderline he very strongly detests Christianity
yeah,
and the way that it indoctrinates people, which is where I think I've got that in me from. Um, but he loves the music. He loves hymns,
yeah,
and to a point where he actually, it, it, I think he expressed to me once that it was quite difficult that he couldn't access that music anymore because it was associated with
yeah.
reverence and prayer, which he just no longer felt and actually actively disliked now.
I
But
mean,
like he thinks that the Christian music is excellent, but admittedly he was Protestant, not Catholic, so.
I'll give him a free one. I'm sure I've played you the piece of music before, but it's called Miserere Deus, and it was written for the Vatican and only to be performed in the Vatican.
Hmm.
And Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart went to the Vatican, and they were performing it, and he asked when they would be performing it again, and could he have a copy of the sheet music? And they said they'll be singing it all day, and no. So he stood and listened a few times, went home and transcribed the entire thing because he was Mozart.
So
And
he
so the rest of the world got that piece of music.
oh, so he took it with him and he disseminated it outside the Vatican.
Yeah. He was
That's
like,
fucking wild.
it's music. Music is for everyone. You don't get to keep it.
I didn't realize
And
that Mozart was the original Napster.
yeah, he's great.
Huh,
But he,
top notch.
yeah, and
Pirate
it's
Bay,
an
here we come.
incredible piece of music. And yeah, tell your dad he can listen to it because it was nicked from the Vatican.
Love it. Yeah, so if you play it anywhere other than the Vatican, it becomes this sacrosanct bit of blasphemy.
Yeah,
Love it, love it.
delicious.
So I have a follow-up question, not to keep it on
Oh,
religion for a moment, but
oh
so
no. Yeah,
I
go on.
went to a Church of England school, which for our non-British audience is a very strange thing. But it's essentially Protestantism as a
With
sort of
extra steps.
yeah. They basically just paint the school and put a cross somewhere, like and you have to say grace and shit like that, or the Lord's Prayer anyway. Um, but all of the obviously teachers are very they're hardworking, they're overworked, and they're underpaid.
Yeah,
So they typically go to school, wearing either, I think, just like normal clothes, but they're a bit sort of like drab because they're just being run down by life when they should be
yeah,
exalted. Um, so I'm wondering, in the same way that in Christianity, Protestantism doesn't have any bling, do Catholic school teachers actually dress up to go to work? Do they do they wear like gold crosses and have big hats and shit like that?
oh, everyone wore a cruciform. Everyone was
Ooh.
wearing a cruciform. But I remember a lot of, like Umbridge, Dolores Umbridge from the Harry Potter
Yeah.
series. The headmistress was like that, but everything was yellow.
Oh.
I have these like vivid memories of a grey skirt and a big yellow cardigan,
Ugh.
and there was a lot of that. There was a lot of like very long skirts, sensible shoes, cardigans, cruciform. That was like the go-to. But that was also a very strange school. We had prize-winning chickens
Right.
and like a chicken breeding program. And if you were a good student, you could do things like rotate the eggs in the uh oh God, what's it called? The machine that kept them warm, incubator.
Incubator. Yeah.
And like the kids would get to we could go to chicken competitions.
What the fuck is going on there?
Ye- I went to such a weird school, man.
I mean, were you child labour on a farm that was pretending to be a Catholic primary school?
Basically, our school also had a swimming pool.
Was it
This
a
like weird
pond?
concrete above ground thing that was unheated entirely. And
Yeah.
maybe once a year they'd be like, "Time to get you in, peel the cover off it, and
Ugh.
just sort of dunk you through that green layer of
Oh, for
mildew,
fuck's sake!
and let you go in the ice cold water."
They're just sort of trying to
Oh,
give you some manner of dysentery. Just
I think just like the voyages of old. If you're not shitting water, you're not a Christian missionary. In you go.
they dunk you in like Achilles holding your ankle.
They hang you by the cruciform, man. They just hold that and plop you in.
Well, this was a fucking delightful diversion into the madness of religious schools. Ugh.
You're reminding me of so many things about my primary school that I
Yeah,
haven't thought about for some
I've
time.
unzipped you.
Yeah. You unzip me. Right, I've got to zip myself back up, so you're gonna have to tell a story while I'm doing it.
Okay, all right. Here we go. The heart. There is a door in our home to which I alone have the key. It stands between bookcases in our library, and beyond it lies a stairwell that stretches to the tapering ends of my life, up to my future and down to my past. It is the same door at each landing, and I have gone through it often. The dominant noise in there is not the creaking of the ancient steps or the hissing of my hands on the worn banister wood. It is the clocks, the uncountable baroque clocks which hang from the black walls. Their ticks have gone awry, yet their tocks remain synchronous. Together they mark the passing of my life. My mother's note spoke to me of the same discordant cacophony before she passed the key to me. I kept the pen she wrote it with in the breast pocket of my jacket as a reminder of her strange life. We do not age as regular folk in my family, but the clocks still know when our time is up. I often consider telling my boy about the truth of my life, yet I never do. He is mine, but not of me, and I doubt the key will work for him if my mother's words are to be believed. I dwell in his childhood more often than not. I find it restful there, and I am at peace when lulled to a deep sleep by the sound of his small lungs pulling in regular breaths. The boy was always to be a part of my life, a fact of fate I discovered only after my mother died. I had thought in my youth to use the staircase she had spoken of, to find love, riches, or even public acclaim. Instead, the staircase showed me that I possessed barren seed and an empty heart that needed a child's love. The man my boy became when he ventured beyond the shelter of our home filled me with pride. He could even live happily in the present, a feat for which I would need to cease using the key to imitate. I have never told him about the staircase, and that decision was made of the fear that dwells within all parents. Too much of me and the weight of our family's key might, I thought, bungle his otherwise healthy development. The sound of the clocks began to grow louder. The unmusical chipping away of my time followed me through the door when I tried to spend it with him. I decided not to disturb his childhood with my restlessness. Instead, I gravitated to the loneliness of my empty nest in later life. That time was a fitting place to battle my way to Pyrrhic slumber. Yet the sound continued to gnaw at me. It stole not only rest, but also hunger and thirst. The longer I remained in one time, or the further I strayed from the staircase, the louder it grew. I wondered to myself if it was what drove my mother in her final moments to use the key upon herself. Blood follows blood. She had written those words to end the note she left to me. I had once interpreted them to mean that I was her successor. That sentiment condemned me to an inherited incarceration. When she plunged the point of the dagger into her chest and burst her heart, she forged the key to my tomb as well. As my will to battle my situation degenerated, I resolved that the time had come to ascend to the last door, to finally know my fate. It was not a long climb. The final landing was distinct only in that the stairs went no further. The door looked no different, and I sat by it for a time, with my back pressed to the ageless black wall, looking for my courage. I could not think, so I spoke my thoughts into the dissonant sounds of the stairwell. I could not hear them, so I began to shout, then to scream, and suddenly found that I was stood up and filled with rage. I tore at the clocks, scattering them from the wall and flinging them down the staircase, where they clattered to pieces. I attacked them until the beating of blood in my ears began to muffle their incessant ticking, and I was struggling for breath. Then I saw the hole I'd made, likely dragging a nail out with its constituent clock. Shards of pale but colourful light lanced through it, illuminating the dreary landing. I moved my hand amongst the beams, marvelling at their strangeness. The hole was small, but I knew I had to see what was beyond. When I brought my eye to the hole, I saw countless stars, both near and far. The constellations were swaddled by swirling clouds of colourful nebulae, and in the centre span an enormous blue sun. Its cold warmth pulsed, matching every tock of my clocks. A shadowy bulk eclipsed my peephole, stealing the vista and replacing my wonder with fear. Something else was out there. I stepped back quickly, snatching my eye from the unknown. It was nothing, a small misstep at the lip of a stair, but I fell. In a desperate moment of simian reflex, I flung out my limbs to grasp something. My fingers scrabbled at the empty wall, and my outstretched foot snagged. The tumble had thrust it through the spindles of the banister. The ankle turned as far as it would go, and then the shin above it snapped, freeing me to continue my fall. I smashed through the dead clocks I had littered the switchback corner with, and slid down the last steps on my back. My head bounced once on the boards of the landing below, hard enough to snuff my candle. I awoke, face to face with a broken clock, and terror rose in front of my mind like an icy tidal wave. I had damaged something I would be unable to mend, and the boy would never find my body. I felt that I was wet to the hip from where my blood had soaked through my trousers, and I could not bring myself to look at the leg. Instead, I found my courage to act, and left a trailing smear as I crawled towards the door. I fumbled the dagger from its sheath on my belt, and stabbed the key into the heart-shaped lock. Uncontrollable shivers raced through me when the door opened. My teeth chattered as I took down a book from a low shelf that I could still reach. I tore the dedication page from it, and took the pen from my jacket pocket before rolling onto my front. My hand, shuddering, fractured the form of each letter, but I doggedly proceeded, writing, "Look beyond this. Only use the door if you need to see me again, please." After that, there was nothing left for me but to do as my mother had done before me. I am alone, shuffling through our home, and looking for something to occupy me for a time. My son has his own home now, with his own family in it. I like to think of him, but My heart wrenches me to tears if I do that for too long. A sound reaches me from the library, and I rush to it, hoping it's my boy, needing me.
I really fucking like that, man.
Excellent.
It's so I don't want to use the term confusing because that gets attributed to a lot of things, movies like Tenet or Inception, where people say, "Oh, it was really confusing," but that's not what I mean.
Mm.
It's it's like having the threads of your brain tapestry unwoven a little bit, and you have to concentrate to make the picture. And even though it's all there, it's it's letting you explore the idea more. And there's there's just enough there. You've used the word count really nicely to tell a gigantic story very elegantly in a short amount of time.
Oh, that's a really nice compliment and feedback. Thank you.
The I mean, there's some great phrases in there. I mean, Pyrrhic slumber. That's
Yeah, I wasn't
absolutely
I wasn't
lovely.
sure whether that one was a bit much actually, but you liked it.
Maybe I just like that sort of horrible
Yeah,
thing, but
it's true. I mean, sometimes you've got to put some flour on it, haven't you?
yeah, it's.
You've got
I
to
mean,
gild that lily.
it does a good job as well. As that is a word that's normally associated with battle. It doesn't just speak of a small hard fought victory. It it shows what this man's like all of the time if he's thinking of sleep in terms of battle.
Yeah, very much under the cosh because of this
Yeah,
just pervasive noise that follows him.
but I mean that's again where we get our similarities. Both leads haunted by a sound.
Yeah, absolutely. Very very Poe in that way. I think
Yeah.
they both go for that. Clearly, we both felt that in the heart as a prompt.
Yes. It's I tell you a thing that I really like about it is that normally when you get these kind of stories where people can go sort of back and forth like the time traveler's wife or about
Yes.
time, those kind of things,
Hmm.
it's always very uplifting and there's love and there's they use time to make the best of what they have before something is sad. But because of the way the sort of time traveling is working in this, everything is an inevitability, and all he can do is visit it, and that's very, very dark and very haunting. Like that, the idea of that last door and not having even gone up to see. So when he goes, it was not a long climb. I think was the phrase he used.
Yeah. Yeah.
That it's yeah, like imagine how it would feel to be in that situation. Like I could just keep walking up and see how many doors I've got and not doing it. And I don't think I could do it. I don't think I'd ever walk up it.
I think there might be a little bit of Pratchett's influence on me there. Actually, the
Yeah.
idea that wizards and witches in the Discworld they know when they're going to die.
Yes.
I think there's maybe obviously I haven't used it in the same way that he did, but I think I'm wondering whether that's where I got
Yeah.
that
And
bit
I mean,
from.
it's so. I mean, apart from the chin snapping being fucking, that was horrible.
Mm.
It's
Yeah,
that you thought, oh, has it saved him? And then that's such a horrid injury.
yeah,
Like
just
even then
tibia.
smashing his head off the stairs through a load of like broken clocks. That's bad. But the shit that horrid, really really nasty. Um, is this setting inspired by a place you and I both were recently, which is the Wax Museum in Dublin?
It is. So it's the reason
Uh,
that I double backed to go and spend some more time there was because I had the seed of this idea on
oh,
your stag do.
amazing. Would you like to explain the place to our lovely listeners?
It was quite a funny little place, really, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Had lots of. It's a bit of like sort of Madame Tussauds if anyone's been to that kind of thing in London. Um, but the one in Dublin was it was sort of janky in places and then kind of cool in others. There was lots of funny things, but there was just one of the when you had to go between two of the rooms, there was just a set of stairs that just had you sort of went down 3 flights of stairs and that you were just surrounded by clocks of all different kinds. And at the moment that I saw it, I just thought, well, fuck, I'm gonna have to write something about this. This is great. Um,
You were immediately thinking about writing about it. I was immediately trying to forget it.
oh, really? You didn't like it?
I was I don't know why. It just freaked me out a little bit. I think it's because they were all on different times.
Yes. Yeah.
Did not like that about it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it was very strange. And obviously, you actually put a bit of you mentioned Ireland in your story as well. So clearly, we're both processing the stag do that we went on.
Yeah. The and I know you had a fall recently on the stairs.
That makes me sound like I'm about 100 years old. But yeah, I did.
Ben
I
took a
did.
fall,
I
but you you had something similar, right? Where your foot got your foot between the banister on
yeah.
purpose, I want to
Oh,
say.
yeah. I kind of like caught myself against it. Yeah. So yeah,
Was
I caught myself rather than fucking killing myself on the stairs like this guy did.
was this you playing out your worst fears of what might
Yeah.
have happened there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I find
I
it really useful to put it on paper because otherwise it just sticks with me for ages. Like,
I mean,
go on.
I was just I'm absolutely haunted by my lovely fiance and I. We were moving house once, and she was carrying it was the box the TV came in up the stairs, and it caught on something, and she didn't realize it had caught. And as she went up, made her fall backwards down the stairs.
Shit.
She landed at the bottom, loads of back pain. Luckily, nothing, or as so we thought had happened. So we did the rest of the house move, Kath sitting in the driver's seat and me moving stuff around. And then found out sort of 2 years later that on your vertebrae, you've got like the central column and the two little bits sticking out.
Mhm.
That on the one of her vertebrae, she'd snapped the sticky out bit off when she fell.
Oh. Oh shit.
So she had nearly broken her spine falling down the stairs. And now we live in a one floor flat, and I would prefer not to have stairs quite a lot of the time because yeah, I mean, they're fucking terrifying.
Jesus. Yeah, I mean the concept of them leading to injury is very bad. My grandmother had a very bad fall down the stairs.
Yeah.
Before she was very ill. And it was horrible. It shattered her shoulder, like
Oh,
shattered her shoulder, and for the next, I think that was about it must have been about 10 years or something before she died, and for the rest of her life she just couldn't get her left arm above about sort of like mid chest height. Just, I mean, she did get a little bit more
oh,
movement in it when she went through a period of doing loads of physio to try and get it there, but it was absolutely fucked, and it was a really horrific injury. There was like a
yeah.
big dent in her shoulder where bone should have been. Because it wasn't like it was like snapped or anything like that. It was
It's
gone. It was
busted. Yeah.
busted. Yeah.
Ooh,
Very horrible. And then, so the thing I was going to say was that if I don't put shit like this into stories, it just stays
yeah.
in my head. So many years ago, I was the sort of victim of a home invasion in Malawi, which I think I've talking about. I think I've spoken about on this podcast before.
Only
And
briefly. Yeah.
yeah, one of the fellows that I was sort of tussling with, um, was using because they like literally like chopped through the door with machetes and all the rest of it. One of them had this like chisel that he'd snapped off into like a shiv, like a long shiv.
Yeah.
And I when they all sort of bust through the door, there was about six of them, so I was absolutely fucked. Um, the guy like sort of slashed at me and then stabbed. And I just got my head out of the way, and my eye was really really close to um this sort of dagger blade thing.
Yeah.
And for about 2 years after that incident, I'd sort of well, whether I'd resolved it or not, I don't know, but like that potential injury, had I been standing like an inch closer to him, meant that whenever I had a more sort of like lucid dream or a long dream, I always had one eye in the dream. It was just
Oh wow.
that was what I was in sort of the mental space. It took absolutely ages to get that out. So I'm getting this out now. This obviously a minor tumble is nowhere near what that was, but I'm just getting this out now, so it's not in my fucking brain for the rest of my life.
Yeah. It's well, the reason I'd asked about both, well, brought up both things having happened was that I was going to say I'm really impressed by your ability to like lift up the experiences happening to you and transpose them without it being. I think if you didn't know you and know those things had happened to you, you wouldn't be able to tell it was you. No, it's not like someone saying, and then they went to the Spice Girls concert. They played these songs.
Yeah.
It was well good. Like you have a real knack for it, and it brings a sense of reality to it because you are telling the truth
Mm.
with those things. I think yeah, it's a great skill and one I don't think I really have. I'm too busy looking for jokes to put reality in.
I don't know. I think you do it quite well with the sort of mental health stuff. I think
Yeah,
you
that's fair.
capture altered states of mind very well in a very similar fashion. I would say. Um, wow, we're really sucking each other off here. Let's move on past this for a minute.
We're getting deep into the man love.
The man love.
I'm not
Yeah,
against it.
so I really enjoyed it. I actually had to wrangle with it like an absolute for absolutely ages. This is like draft 4 or 5.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
because the tenses were just absolutely tripping me up. I couldn't figure out what I needed to be in and all the rest of it. Because it's a story essentially about time travel, I wanted to do
Yeah.
something with tenses involved in that. But initially, just trying to weave past and present tense into the same paragraph just makes it look like you don't know how to write with tenses. Um,
Right.
so I changed it so that the bulk of the story is all in first person past tense.
Yes.
And then the bit after the final sort of tick tock is in first person present tense. So it's the what I'm trying to imply there. I mean, what do you think I'm trying to imply there? Let's see if that's
I mean the guess, but from hearing it was that it was looped, and when we'd got to the beginning, it was now, which is the start of the loop again, and things are they're just always going to be cyclical.
mm,
And what we're told it's happening, but it's already happened while we're being told that it's happening because it's always going to happen.
I think that's deep. That's deep. I think it's deeper than what I was thinking actually, which is just that he's now actually getting to live his life in those
Oh,
moments.
that's way nicer.
Um, because he's sort of like passed on this thing that's needed to open the door and use the door.
Yeah.
Um, so yes, it was a big one. You know, I tried to sort of get into the mind of a parent, and in particular the parent of like the parent who's had to deal with their own shit from their own parents and now
Yeah.
has a bit of that sort of empty nest syndrome. I tried to get a bit of that in.
There was
Um,
a really nice bit about, being able to sleep properly, especially talking about the sort of Pyrrhic victory sleep, um, from just like listening to the baby breathing.
mm,
That's yeah, I think there's a lot of good stuff about sleep in there actually. It's like sleep and wakefulness and that time travel stuff in the staircase is kind of a dream state sense anyway. So I think yeah, that thread works well.
mm, good, good. Well, I'm pretty pleased with it. I think maybe it's not quite there, but I'm well, or maybe it is. I don't know. I almost think I need to like put it in a drawer for a bit, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Listen to it ticking.
Yeah, I'll have to listen to it back.
How
Um,
did you find the prompt generally? I found it a bit of a struggle actually. It took a while before I landed on something that I thought, actually, yeah, that's a story I could tell.
um, how did I find it? I don't think I. I don't think I found it particularly like a particularly resistant prompt. You know, sometimes it's just like aside from the obvious, what the hell am I going to do here?
Yeah,
Um, and then sometimes you just get a story that just falls in your hand. Yeah, I would say it's somewhere between the two. I found it fairly middling.
yeah,
Um, I think prompts, you know, just from sort of a meta perspective, prompts that start with the
yeah.
um, are kind of helpful in some way because it really focuses on whatever the object or emotion or whatever it is.
Yes, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think if it was just heart, you could do it about someone who's very brave or.
But I think you could still do that with this prompt.
Yeah.
In
Well, I
fact,
think
that
really
was
you can do
even
anything, can't you?
you can. I think that was even one of the things that I sort of close to one of the things that I wrote down potentially in the drill book for this.
Oh,
Um, but yeah, this was I wrote the initial idea for this down whilst we were in Dublin in the drill book, and then drilled it when I got home.
find that extremely pleasing.
Yeah, it was lovely. Well, I think we've potentially reached the end there. 2 stories, a big workshop. We even had a little interlude about your sort of partially Catholic upbringing.
We sure did.
So, thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you next time.
See you all out there.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of The Tiny Bookcase.
Remember to subscribe, otherwise you're going to miss out on the future fun.
Also, tell a friend. If you like this episode, link them to it.
We'd be tremendously grateful. You can follow us on Twitter at BookcaseTiny, Facebook at The Tiny Bookcase, and Instagram at BookcaseTiny for updates. Speaking of supporting the podcast, well, magic can only take one so far. The Tiny Bookcase is supported by the generosity of its patrons. Those kind souls have really kept my belly full the last year. Let's cast a spell for them, shall we? For magnificent beardery, let's cast the Chinicus folliculale spell on Gary Laird. For rich ginger tones on the scalp, let us cast the Orangi Hedondo spell for Scott Byrne. And for general fabulousness, why not the Ooh La La, How's Your Mother spell on Matthew McLaren?
How do you come up with that shit, man?